All right. So in release management, we have this category that's called release evidence. It was rebranded from this concept of release governance, which is this idea of how do we create auditable artifacts in the pipeline as a result of a deployment job. There's a couple of challenges with release governance as a name. One of them was we weren't really doing any permissioning or gates or approval workflows inside of release governance. So we just changed it to be focused exclusively on creating this exportable, downloadable, and diffable artifact for an auditor to come into GitLab and compare changes of version tags over time. So when we look at the purpose of release evidence is for a tag that's been created in GitLab to be compared and to see the changes that have been produced with code and with issues, and to create that chain of custody for that production state. Okay. Some of the jobs to be done that people are trying to accomplish inside of GitLab that are centered around release evidence are focused on how do I avoid disrupting a developer when I need to create an artifact of the version that we released 3-4 months ago. So if I wanted to produce an artifact of changes, like these are the test results, the MRs that were bundled into this release version, because an auditor is like, I need to show that you've been documenting changes over time and that those changes are valid. You would, as a manager, compliance manager, don't want to go ping a developer to be like, hey, can you give me a query of all the changes that we've made to our production state 3 months ago and compare it for me for this state? So that's the usability perspective of it. Any questions on like the purpose, the history, what we're doing with it?
I don't know. It's kind of a side questions. Like, is there any tool we're trying to replace with this?
No.
Okay,
It doesn't
so it's
really
kind of a
exist
brand new
anywhere
thing.
else. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know. I have some like super detailed questions. It's like
Go for it.
I don't
Yeah.
remember that we have like SHA hash sum of the like basically code tree in the evidence, which kind of sounds like usable for the thing you just described. And also maybe, yeah, maybe some kind of a commit log also could be usable there, but yeah. Also, actually, if you can like add some examples of, I know you had a few meetings with clients about evidence, so like what exactly they're trying to do, like some, I don't know, some very narrow use cases, what they want to see there and how they will use it.
Yeah. So a government agency wants to be able to do pre-audits before an auditor comes in. So they'll take a sampling of these JSON files and they will create a query around it to say that our version is compliant for policies that we've set. So for example, we only do monthly releases. So we want evidence to suggest that we're only releasing every month and we're not doing any patches beyond that. There's other questions that they're wanting to answer as well. So for example, we have a space engineering customer, NASA. And so NASA wants to be able to show that a developer who's committed changes in a mirrored repository is following the right protocols that are set up inside of GitLab. So for example, they may be using a merge request in GitLab to make a change to a mirrored repository. And that change they want to mark as like, okay, this change was made through this MR, this change was committed to a mirrored repository in GitLab and GitHub. And we're showing that evidence trail through the release evidence artifact. So it's a very merge request focused view on that particular release tag.
So it's kind of like, if I get you right, you saying that basically the whole feature about merge requests included in the evidence is born from this use case, right?
Yes, exactly.
One question here is that it doesn't actually guarantee that the developer didn't bypass the merge request and just didn't commit to master, because yeah.
And that's kind of where we're also like from an auditor perspective, they just want to know that you're enforcing policies that you've set. So there may be rules that each organization puts in place from the MR, like requires 2 approvals, or you need to have an external non-code reviewer approve your merge request. That kind of detail is something that we would want to consider expanding inside of release evidence. So like when the compliance side of the house allows you to instrument compliance policies in GitLab, we'd want to find a way to capture that information, because that would answer the question that you just said, like, how do we make sure that this merge request wasn't committed out of band, right?
Yeah, I see. Okay, so basically like the next feature will be to basically add the approvers to the merge requests, or maybe they are already there, but I don't remember.
Yes. So there's 2 use cases where like, yeah, you can set up your approvers to not be in your same project, and that's how you accomplish separation of duties. But there's some more like extreme cases, which are the recently you broke up 2 issues about creating like a deployer role that doesn't have access to the code. That is like a very popular use case I'm hearing in public sector, where they want people who have no access to the code to be the ones deploying.
Yeah,
and we'd want to suck that information into the release evidence, you know, who deployed, and then the key name and the commit SHA of that deployment, right?
Yeah, but it actually can be done like in a very separate manner. Basically, I don't know, in the current GitLab, it can be easily implemented by just having 2 projects, one for code and one for all the deployment stuff. So
yeah, so here's one of the challenges. FINRA, for example, they have over 10,000 projects.
Yeah.
And all of them are deploying to a production environment. And they have one operations team that supports all 10,000 projects. So when they look at like a distributed center, that's really hard to maintain. Like you'd have 20,000 projects then to maintain deployment separation of duties. And then there's like the question of how do you manage like upstream changes of like forked projects if you're doing like an open source distribution, and managing, like you'd have to have a third project of people managing that forked repository and managing upstream changes. So there was a couple of like complexities at scale that GitLab doesn't really. GitLab's great for mono repos. You know, like we're super clean for that use case. Maybe it feels like in the permission model we're good for mono repos. Maybe in other functionality we're not so much, but
I don't know. I mean, we like if we speak about the permissions, then like we don't have a very granular permissions, and for mono repos you probably have like thousands of developers, and you want to much more granular permissions. And also, like, I'm not sure if Git in general is a good thing for mono repos. So, yeah.
So but then yeah, taking anyway, like a step back for release evidence, right now we're adding stuff to it to make it a richer data asset. And from my perspective, our next like big step is to start to think about the merge request and the approvers and getting that detail into the release evidence. And those are the 2 main feature sets that will bring it to a more viable state, because then people can actually see that chain of custody, that like this is the change that was made to this release tag, and this is who approved that change, and then who made that change. And what we'll do with that asset potentially in the future is set like rules saying, hey, this release tag actually has the same approver and merger, or same approver and deployer. And like 3-year vision, super far out, you said in your GitLab policy that you wanted to have a different approver and merger on this merge request. So it would send some sort of alert or notification to let them know that their release tag is not compliant with their policy, and allowing them to have like some sort of workflow to be like, hey, this policy can be overridden because this was a hot fix that we had to do in order for, continuity of service or whatever.
Yes. One second, Jackie.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You're fine.
Да. Да. Можно я перезвоню через 20 минут? Я сейчас на встрече. Перезвоню через 20 минут, я сейчас на встрече. Спасибо. Super sorry about that. I'm back. One more.
You're good.
I can hear you. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. My laptop decided that I need the music after the call ended. So I needed to turn it off. Yeah. So I can hear now. Let's continue.
That happens to me a lot. I have the same problem.
Yeah.
Okay. So to kind of like put it in very simple terms, now, like from a roadmap view, now we need to include merge request and usability to get release evidence to a viable state for comparing chain of custody. Next, we need to think about approvers and including that information inside of the release evidence so that we can complete the workflow of who made this change and who approved the change. And then the last future perspective is allowing people to compare inside of GitLab natively. So what are the changes between each version tag in the release evidence? And also set up workflows or rules that approvers and mergers need to be different roles based off of the compliance policy.
Yeah, I see. So like, just to recap like how it looks in my head right now. So basically what we're doing with evidence is kind of a tool for like an easy like pre-audit, like when you do like internal audit stuff. And it's basically just an index of everything which you can later use to basically click into stuff and see that everything is good. And if something wasn't good, then it will be like red flagged by the GitLab. And you see it, and you can like make an excuse before the real audit.
Exactly, like pre-clad it, yeah.
Okay, so and will this be like actually used by the real audit, which will happen after this?
That's what we're hoping, is that this is the opportunity for people to then furnish an easily extracted record, right? So what the compliance team wants to do is take those JSON files and aggregate them into an audit report that a customer can export from GitLab. So they'll consume these JSON files upstream into the compliance stage.
Okay, I see. Yeah, that actually clarifies a lot in my head, because like, to be honest, from my perspective, it looked like, yeah, there are a couple of people who think that it might be useful, but there was actually a huge gap between like my understanding how it will be used and actual the user's need, because I didn't have that feeling. So
other ways that people are looking to use it too are like take the JSON files and extract them into Grafana and model, like visualize the changes of test results and the percentage of MRs that had related artifacts or pipelines that had related artifacts, and collect some of those like metadata piece as indicators of like what are most common changes in their release version tags. This was a contractor for a Department of Defense that they were looking for that. So there's some sort of record keeping that they have to have around MRs, approvers, and related artifacts, whether that's a binary, an asset link, or a test result, for example.
Yeah, but like the one thing I don't get here is that basically release evidence is collected like weekly or monthly, depends on how often you make a release. So, and Grafana is more like a everyday tool. So maybe they either looking for draft release evidence, which is basically building while you build the release, or they looking for just exporting some data from the development workflow.
Just data from the development perspective. So like, for example, with CD teams, they could be releasing to production multiple times a day, every day. So they could have hundreds of release tags with release evidence that commits a bunch of changes. So
yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, also like just wanted to highlight that currently we don't actually collect related merge requests to the, like, I mean, we have some feature, right, for showing merge requests into release evidence, but it's not actually tied to code changes. It basically just takes in milestones, right, and then takes all the related merge requests, and half of them may be already released in the previous release, and half of them may have nothing to do with this release actually. So yeah, maybe we need to.
I think for me, like, that's a documentation. Oh, go ahead.
Maybe we just need to compare, compare Git history between like current and the previous tag, and try to find merge requests from this. And yeah, at least in this case, they will be related to the actually released code, not some other stuff.
I like that idea. I wonder if this will be like helped with like auto change log features too, when we generate an auto change log, because that's kind of like a Git history.
Yeah, basically, if we can like implement the auto change log, then we can just use the same stuff in the, maybe just commit all this change log directly to the release evidence and save it there. Yeah, right now, I mean, like these merge requests very fuzzily tied to the actual code which was released. So.
Yeah, I agree. When I mentioned earlier that it's unusable for people who are not leveraging milestones, that's exactly what I meant. Like, if they don't use milestones, then you're not going to get any merge requests, which you won't have that history that you're looking for.
Yeah, and if you use continuous delivery and you use the milestones like we do, like 1 month for one milestone, then you have, like, for one small release, which contains only half a day, you will have all the merge requests from this month, which is not what you want, probably.
Yeah. And it's also, people are kind of using release tags in a lot of different ways as well. So one of the validation cycles that Hyon and I did, we interviewed like 20 or so different customers on their release tag usage. And one of the customers mentioned that they're creating release tags. They're not using CI or CD in GitLab, but they're creating a release tag with the API, and they're adding like a link to their source code in that release tag as representation of their current state. And I guess we didn't dig too deep into it because we don't see a lot of people using SCM and consuming release tags, but that was a really odd use case of people trying to create representations of their code with version tags rather than like actual like actual snapshots. And for me, like in the goal of release evidence is to be a tangible snapshot of the way your code is, which is different than like just a representation of what we have, which is like, here's a milestone that we're expecting to deliver, and here's the related MRs. Like, it doesn't necessarily capture the essence of this is a snapshot of your live production data today.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, perfect. I think we're like a little time over. Let me check. No, we have like 2 minutes left. Okay. I don't want to take more of your PTO than necessary. Was this a helpful conversation? Was this useful?
Yeah, that was definitely helpful. I wonder how helpful it was for you, and we probably should jump to the roadmap or something.
Yeah. So the
I can
release.
stay longer, by the way. I have after this meeting.
Yeah, I've a call with Nadia at 9:30. Okay. So I think I have like, yeah, we can bump up until 9:30. So looking at your release evidence roadmap epics, let me see if I can find.
Yeah, and if you can share your screen, that probably would be nice.
I can do that. Let me find it.
Basically, it's not like a roadmap from the like product perspective. It basically, I don't know. I just collected all the bugs we currently had and basically aligned them. Yeah, I just aligned them in a way it will be most logical to fix them, like in easiest path, because yeah, some of them are dependent on others. So.
Okay, let me view it on GitLab. Alrighty, so yeah, this is the issue that we called kind of an epic, and then it's not assigned to an epic or anything, but this is like our technical debt and like usability of evidence that's been identified, right? Like unable to download evidence collection.
Yeah, exactly. By the way, one question about this, like I saw this hardening issue. I didn't dig into it, but question is, did we consider just, I don't know, showing showing the full evidence only to auditors and disregarding all the permission model inside? So like if you have an auditor, yeah, and only showing like a super small snapshot for the other people, and like not even showing evidence SHA there. So like it will be like promotional stuff that, hey, we have this, but to actually get an access to it, you need to be an auditor or maybe a maintainer of the project or something like that. So just to avoid all this.
You're reading my mind exactly. That's what this issue was for, was to lock it down, to say it a different way, because this could be, well, it's noise for a developer as well, and they're not really going to care about evidence collection. So to keep the release page super clean, Sean and I talked about restricting it to auditors, just like you said. When I was talking to the compliance organization now, there's some concerns around if in order to remediate in the future, the 3-year vision plan, in order to remediate some of the things that aren't working, they may need to have like a maintainer level. So if we can allow like the appendment of a auditor role to a maintainer, and then a standalone auditor, like maybe that's it's a permission add-on rather than like a standalone thing. That might be a useful way to apply it for here. But the MVC was, release evidence will no longer be a developer and maintainer access perspective. It'll just be an auditor. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you want me to add this to this as a related issue here, or keep it separate?
I guess we can keep it separate. It's okay. Like, yeah, this basically was just to collect the bugs, as I said.
I'm going to call this release evidence tech debt.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I just basically I just wanted to, I guess I started to write to you on a Slack and decided that, yeah, it's probably better to be placed in an issue.
I love it. That's perfect.
Yeah.
I think in our, let me check. I think I linked a document here. No, I didn't. I have this document floating around that's like the specific jobs to be done and the related issues for it. I'll send it over to you about release evidence, but like the way I see it is we would harden and fix the tech debt and then expand any functionality, like include, security scans or whatever, like as we get people using it more. But
Yeah.
I think that this is really important that we make it usable for people who aren't using milestones. That seems to be like a priority that we might want to tackle.
Yeah, I guess like generating of the changelog automatically will be a great addition to the evidence. Yeah, if we can make it.
Yeah, I like that idea. I'll create that issue then. I'm going to add a note here so I can remind myself.
Don't forget to mention yourself.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah. That's actually one of the nicest tricks I saw in the GitLab. Creating a to-do for myself by mentioning.
I have a very similar workflow. Okay, perfect. Anything else? Any other questions on it?
No, thanks. Actually, yeah, thank you so much for, I guess this meeting was more valuable to me than it for you, I don't know, just because, I don't know, I didn't understand how this will be used and how this should work, so
well,
now
actually,
I understand it much better.
This was super helpful for me because from your perspective, like Git history would be more usable. And I think you were getting at one of the nuances that I'm concerned about with the adoption of the feature for people who aren't using Plan. So this was super helpful because it opened up like another opportunity to think about commits as something that we can suck in here rather than it being just these arbitrarily loosely connected milestones, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's super good. Okay, awesome. Thank you, Vlad, so much. Let me know if you need anything. I'm probably going to rename our Pages sync to be just a release sync for you and I, like just make it a one-on-one bi-weekly, and then we can just dive into any other like roadmap questions, just work you have in progress and roadmap stuff. So we just have a regular touch point on that. Sound okay?
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah. Okay. Have a great day then.
Perfect. Talk to you soon. Enjoy your time. Bye.
Yeah, thanks.